Hey everyone, it's Ethan Kapp here, one of the producers of the film The Retirement Deception. This is our second movie into this category, what we believe to be a lot of good uh, documentaries that are coming down the pike in terms of how to show the American people how to actually retire successfully. Many programs out there talked about how to earn a lot of money or how you can create passive income, if you will. This is what is retirement success? What does that look like? And so with me here today is one of our featured experts in the film. We had him come to the film and give his points on some of what it is to retire successful. We are excited to have him involved in this film and getting the message out. His name is Navi Dowdy. Thanks for being here today, Navi. How you doing?
Fantastic.
So just for the purposes of this conversation, why don't you just kind of let people know a little bit about you and what is your focus and what you do?
Well, I've been doing this forever, over 40 years, and I focus now on people and have for the last 40 years on people into or going into retirement. And what I've found over that time is the main thing they need is income. If you're a multi-billionaire, then it doesn't matter. But for the vast majority of people in America, they need income in retirement. And lots of ways that people can get income, but the bottom line is if they have enough income, then they're pretty happy.
Isn't that interesting to think that what we've been told typically is happiness is derived from potentially having the most assets, but what we are finding in these documentaries, that not always is the case. That sometimes assets can create more discomfort, frustration, and even worry, and even, as you're saying, not happiness.
Yeah, anxiety. I mean, lots of ways. We have real estate. I had lots of real estate, sold most of it a couple of years ago, but it's a big relief to not have all that real estate now. Gives you income, probably growing income, but there's a lot of issues that go on with it. Same with money in the market. We love money in the market, but if you there are market crashes and they will come periodically. And if you're taking money out when that occurs, it spirals down even faster. So the people that I've found and my clients, you've interviewed some of them, and they're pretty happy with just having income
Yeah,
and growing income.
yeah, we're excited to have you. So let's just backtrack for a second. So a little bit about you. I mean, I've got to know you a little bit better. You're Chicago native, is that correct or not? You were born north,
No, I was born in southern Michigan,
southern
so
Michigan.
been
Okay.
here in Chicago for the last 25 years, and Midwest boy.
And your family calls you like the Warren Buffett of your family, since you've taught them all how to be independent, as you did early in your life, right? You were independently wealthy pretty early in your career, weren't you?
Yeah, I don't know about the Warren Buffett of the family, but yeah, I did. In the beginning, all I did was real estate, and
Yeah,
back then, and I just lucked into that when inflation was massively rising, a little bit like it appears to be doing now, and in also increasing interest rates. So real estate was really great. Now, eventually, the property taxes got so high and the interest rates got so high that that didn't make any sense anymore. In fact, I remember the last apartment complex I built it on spec and I paid 16%. And I remember thinking, I'd rather just I'll buy the bonds and earn the 16% rather than take all the risk and all the hassle of building. And then it's a lot simpler if you just earn the 16% rather than pay it. So,
yeah. There's definitely pros and cons with every strategy.
right.
We explore that in the movie as we talk about what are the ways to receive income. Obviously, you can have a job at some point when you retire, don't want to have active income coming in. There's passive income, there are assets that can pay, like you're saying, real estate can give us income today. There's assets that we can build to provide income in the future. And what is the best way to do that? Is it just withdrawing from a 401k or a large nest egg? Is that create more happiness versus more of a set guaranteed income route? So it's been interesting to go through that. Now on your end, when we talked to you about potentially being a featured expert in the film, what made you want to get involved on your end?
Well, 40 years ago, I started having a lot of retired people because not only did I start buying the bonds, I got licensed to sell them, got hooked up with the company that issued them, and I ended up with a lot of retired people as clients because they wanted that income. So I had to deal with all the issues of retirement. I watched my grandmother go from being pretty prosperous as the wife of a chief engineer of a paper company. When he died, his military and company pension died. My grandfather, or his company and military pension ended, and she really struggled. So she lived as a widow for 35 years. And my experience has been that, usually the guys are not around as long as the ladies, and therefore they end up living on reduced income. And so my mission is to help save America's retirement accounts. It's really that simple. John Templeton, remember, used a lot of John Templeton's stuff back in the 80s. That was his mission too. He felt like if people are financially independent, that's the best way. I've just found that rather than depending entirely on any one strategy, like you said, just withdrawing money from your 401k, that's what most people in America are going to live on. That sometimes works, and it's thrilling when the markets are all going up. They don't always go up, though. And when you start doing that, you're really just selling off your farm. That's not really income. And if you've got so much money, like the billionaires, then it doesn't matter. But for the vast majority of Americans, that really matters. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have come in who retired at the peak of the market in 2000, 2007, and now they are living on scraps simply because they retired at the wrong time. So if you lose money in the first couple of years of your retirement, it can be really bad.
So you've been doing this for 40 years. Is what you just said, you said it's your mission. Is that why this message is so important for you and being involved in this film?
Yeah, well, yeah, like I said, I saw my grandmother struggle, and I've seen lots and lots of widows struggle and couples. They run out of money. They think, all the time people are coming in, and I ask them, what are you going to use for income in retirement? And a lot of times they will say, well, I bought a trading course, or I'm going to flip houses. They see stuff on television. And that's a new business. They're starting a new business. Not very many professional athletes were able to change to another, like you can name them on one hand how many people were able to go from, say, a star football player to another athletic profession. And what we're expecting people to do in America is go from being expert at what they did for 40 years during their work and then replace that and suddenly become an expert at something else. And that's hard to do.
Easier to do if you have income that you don't have to count. That you can count on that just comes in, right?
If it's a lot easier if you have passive income coming in. And that's been that way forever. Go back to Jane Austen's books back in the early 1800s. She talked about that. Remember Darcy was in one of the books? They didn't talk about how much money he had. They talked about how much income he had. That has always been the standard.
Very interesting. Income has always been the standard.
Yep.
So, you've been doing it for 40 years. You have people that come in. If you could bullet it down into one or two sentences, what would you say a successful retirement is?
My experience, hanging around with the people you want to hang around with, where you want to hang around, doing what you want, when you want. Once you retire, every day's Saturday. So, doing what you want to do, having the freedom, I think, is what a successful retirement is. That's been my experience. My clients that are retired, I have to really pin them down for a time because they're busier than they ever were when they were working.
And it's not, and what brings that situation about isn't necessarily having assets exposed to a market situation or just a large nest egg. You're saying it's income.
Yeah, you have some of each. So the idea that you would retire and bet your entire retirement on any one strategy, I think is, really preposterous if you think about it. If you just step back and say, well, should I just put everything in one strategy and just let it ride? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And it's been my experience that that's not a good way to do it.
So what would you say? You mentioned earlier that if somebody loses money within the first few years of retirement, that could really hurt them. Are there other types of threats that could stop people from retiring successfully?
Sure, losing money's one. Bad decisions. Certainly taxes, rising taxes. We know taxes are going up January 1st, 2026 at the latest. Some people are saying they have to sunset that. So taxes are big. Inflation is enormous. So rising interest rates, rising taxes, and rising inflation are the three big financial tidal waves. You've seen my ultimate financial tsunami picture.
Yes, I have.
I drew that out on a napkin in early in 2016, hoping that wasn't going to be true. But of course, certainly rising interest rates and rising inflation are in the news all the time now, and rising taxes are coming. So
Yeah, it's been one of those things that I think people just don't believe that it's going to impact their situation. Or when I talk to other people, they believe Congress
right.
and Washington are just going to pass another thing to lower taxes.
Somebody will save them.
Yeah, somebody will save them. And if you really start to dig in to what's going on, mathematically, Congress is going to be forced to raise taxes. And
That's
so,
what David Walker said.
yeah.
Comptroller General.
So it's interesting to look at that, where it's like my father, he started to put money into a qualified account, and taxes started to go down. And then he then started to pull out and has been pulling out, and he's like, I'm in a lower tax bracket. And I think that's where you get this idea that in 10, 20, 30 years, where people say, well, I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket. That may have been true for people who have been retiring for the last 10 to 20 years ish. Moving forward, though, that may not be the scenario, because even if you are making a little bit less income, but your taxes go up 2 to 3 times, you could still be in a higher tax bracket, paying more in tax than you would have if you would have paid it, at least some of it today, right?
Yeah, well, and plus inflation. Alan Greenspan used to call that the hidden tax. Inflation's the hidden tax.
The silent killer.
This is silent retirement killer.
Yep.
And my motto is less tax, better retirement. But you're right that it has been coming down, and not only the interest rates and inflation, but also taxes. Ever since the end of the Second World War, our tax rates have been coming down. I just saw the number the other day. We are now at 123% of the gross domestic product. And that's really unsustainable. It's supposed to be around 50, 57, 53%. Now 123%. So taxes have been coming down, but also interest rates. Interest rates they're not going to go down another 16%. We literally hit the lowest interest rates in human history a couple of years ago. That's not really sustainable.
No, it's not.
And so you're right that all the things that happened good as you have interest rates going down, that's probably over. And taxes going down.
Well, I'm glad that's why we're getting this message out, so people can get this information into their hands.
Right. And then you have other taxes like the IRMA tax that doesn't even show up on your 1040 tax form.
Yeah. Well, as we've studied IRMA together, we've actually done another documentary on it, where it's really any financial planning you do is it not until you understand what the government has planned for your retirement assets. And taxes was one of those things. Most people, again, have this mindset, which I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket and the government's going to save me. If you say those two theories aren't true for a second, the taxes actually are going to go up, and mathematically Congress will be forced to raise taxes because of all of the cross costs going up, and you most likely won't be in a lower tax bracket. then that's going to significantly switch the type of planning you're going to be doing if you've been doing what Wall Street and Washington have been teaching for the last 30 years, right? Which is, you talk about one single focus, is many people are heavily vested into a qualified plan. What you say when you talk to most people?
Well, almost all of America. There's over $30 trillion in retirement accounts.
Yeah. And so getting into a situation where some of that bucket of money is tax-free probably makes sense, right?
Right. And now it's hard to get the numbers, but it looks to me like it's between 3 and 10% is tax-free. So most of it is still subject to tax. In fact, a reporter asked one of the congressional leaders a couple of years ago, aren't you worried about the deficit? And what she said was very revealing. She said, right off the top of her head, no, we're not worried about the deficit. We haven't even started taxing the retirement accounts yet.
And so why do you think Wall Street's focus is so much on largest nest egg and rate of return versus, hey, let's get you income?
Well, that's what they sell. I mean, and I think some of your money should be in that category. It should be in all the categories. They're not correlated with each other. So if you diversify, not all, what's everybody tell you? If diversification is have some foreign funds, some international, some large cap, small cap, that's not really diversification. Diversification is being in different asset categories. I mean, you can really only be in stocks, bonds, real estate, cash, or commodities. That's all there is. And how do you divide it up amongst those in what sequence? That's, and what timing? That's the trick.
And what would you say would be the difference then of somebody who has the large majority really focused? They may think that they're diversified across mutual funds or stocks, if you will, versus some of the stuff that you talk about that's tax diversification and stuff that we're talking in the documentary. What's the difference there in your mind?
Well, again, if it's all in one category, and whatever that category is, if that goes down a lot near before you retire, right after you retire, then it's tough to recover. I mean, imagine, you do the math. If you've got $2 million and it drops in half, and then you take out 100,000, now you're spiraling down faster and faster. I mean, the last time we had the gigantic decline in '08, last time we had the gigantic decline in '08, it took 7 years for the market to get back. In 2000, it took 13 years for the market to get back. So that's if you didn't add or take anything out. So if you're taking money out over that time, then it spirals down. And a lot of people never got back. I've had people come in that retired in 2000. In fact, I had one gentleman came in, retired in February of 2000. Worst possible instant you could pick. And he had a lot of money to start with, and by the time I saw him, he was living on not much more than his Social Security because he had lost so much, and he just kept spending, and as it went down and down and down, he kept taking money out. And you have to take money out to live on in retirement if that's your only source. So I'm not saying don't have that source, but I'm saying you maybe don't want to have all of that source. And if you have income to cover your basic needs, then you're okay. Then you can do anything with the rest of it. That's the way I would do it.
Okay. And so as people get this film, and whether they're watching in a theater or maybe they're streaming it online, what are you hoping that they take away from this film?
To plan for their retirement. It's the old saying is most people spend more time planning their next vacation than they do all of their retirement. And, Social Security and Medicare and IRMA, that's part of that. The taxes, how are you going to deal with all the taxes? Tax rates are going to go up. So, you just have to plan for it. Get with somebody that knows how to do that planning, and particularly make sure that they know how to deal with taxes.
And you've been doing taxes for how many years as part of your practice?
Well, I way back when I was building buildings, I started dealing with people's tax when I realized that I always remember I tell the story sitting with a cardiologist. I was building some buildings for him, and I had developed this great system for sound control between the apartments. And I'm telling him about it. You know, I had a mock-up made of it. I'm showing it to him, and he says, "That's great. What about the tax savings?" Next day, orthodontist is in there. I'm building a complex for him. Same thing. Oh, that's nice. What about the tax savings? So eventually I figured out that all they care about is the tax savings. So since then, I have dealt with the tax savings because it's not how much do you make. It's really like when you're at work. It's how much you keep after all the expenses. How much do you actually have to spend? And then it's not only just the income tax, it's also the other taxes like the IRMA tax, but it's also then after inflation. So you have to, if you remember, late 70s, what they call it, stagflation. People got pushed into a higher and higher bracket, paying higher and higher taxes, but inflation ate everything up.
Now you mentioned
after inflation.
Okay, and so you had mentioned that somebody should plan earlier, probably the better. If somebody sees this and it's before the film or even after the film and they want to start learning more, maybe even get some advice with what you could help with them, how could they end up talking to you and get some of that advice and help?
Well, they can go to navydowdy.com. It's one way. They could go on my YouTube channel. There's probably 200 tax savings tips there. They can certainly call my office, 630-893-4142. Those would be the main ways. I have classes all the time showing different aspects of this. So a lot of ways, just look me up. I'm there.
Well, good. Well, we've loved having you be a part of this project. Any last thoughts or impressions of being involved and what the message is and how we're getting it out to the world?
I think it's a great message. It's essential. It's really essential. People have to start to pay attention to their retirement. I mean, you think about it, most people are going to be in retirement, at least a lot of people, longer than they worked. You have to fund a retirement, in many cases, longer than you worked. That's pretty challenging. In fact, Bill Sharp was in our last movie. He, Nobel Prize winner. He said retirement planning is the hardest thing of all because you have all these variables that you don't know. You don't know how long you're going to live or what inflation is going to be or how much you can earn. And comes from a Nobel Prize winner. So it's a complex situation and a complex calculation. So get with somebody that knows how to do it. That's what I would leave with everybody.
Well, again, we appreciate you being involved. Thanks for your time today. Appreciate it very much.
I'm glad to be involved.
See ya. Take care.